Welcome to the Dare to Dream podcast, John. I am so excited you are here today. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to share some stories.
This is going to be fun. We're going to share some stories. We're going to dive into some ideas. And I think the first place I want to start is asking you, what is one thing you've done recently to get out of your comfort zone? Because that's kind of how we bonded, a shared love of seeking voluntary discomfort and doing the things that scare us.
So I turned 53 in 2020. And I think as of that year, I said, you know what, I'm too conservative in my life. I joined a business group a couple years earlier, and these guys are all entrepreneurs, and they're doing crazy things, and they're making progress, and they're failing, they're succeeding, they're doing a lot of stuff. And I said, I'm 53 years old today, but I'm 50 in 2020, and I said I'm going to do something different. So I started a challenge myself to do different things, to go, get back into swimming, to maybe do some skydiving. But so now we're doing a lot of different physical activities. So my paralegal and I signed up for an ocean swim in La Jolla, a 1 mile ocean swim, which sounds like a lot, but it was a lot of fun. We started in January of 2024, and we said we're going to join the Master Swim program. We went to the Y. We went swimming 3 or 4 times a week at 6 a.m. and just started challenging ourselves. And it's a hard swim. And some days you don't feel like doing it, and you just get up in the morning, it's dark, you jump in the pool, it's cold, and you're like, okay, I can't turn back now. And so we started just pushing ourselves, and we realized that the more we physically push ourselves in things we don't want to do and do the difficult things, it makes everything else in life easy, and the day was manageable. We felt like we accomplished something. We would always have a coffee afterwards, and we were ready to start our day. So I think right now I just want to do different things. I want to push myself in, physically in different challenges. We signed up for boxing. We're going to do jiu-jitsu with June on, and things that I kind of want to do when I was younger. And one kind of really cool thing that took off, I didn't realize, I have 3 daughters, ages 10, 13, and 15, and I bought them skateboards, and I started skateboarding with my 10-year-old. And it was kind of cool. And I haven't skateboarded since I was 18, 20, when I kind of ate it. And then I just kind of put it away for 40 years or so and brought it back. So I started skateboarding, and we went down a driveway, and it looked really scary. And we said, okay, let's push ourselves even further. Let's take a steeper driveway. So I think it's just getting back into being a kid, doing the fun things in life.
I love that so much. And now you're skateboarding half pipes, you're doing mixed twists.
Not yet. But we became really good friends with Mike McGill, and he invented the 540. So he said he'd come out with us, with my daughter and I, next time we go to the pump track next to our home.
So cool. I love the pump track.
Yeah.
And skateboarding is very different when you're not 18 and made of rubber. You fall down now and it hurts a lot more. I know during COVID, I was getting back into skateboarding, and I fell one time and I was like, that's it. I broke my hip. It's over. And I didn't break my hip. I just had a big bruise, but man, it doesn't feel the same as when we were younger.
Yeah, you don't bounce back as easy.
So this idea of getting out of your comfort zone, facing your fears, I absolutely love it. You mentioned something as we were setting up here, that you have a YouTube channel and you get like 80,000 views on your videos. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to be taking notes from you. So what are these videos? Who's watching? Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So I have a law firm, a tax law firm. We primarily represent companies who are audited by the IRS. So basically, imagine you own a company, and all of a sudden you get a notice from the IRS, hey, we want to have a meeting with you. We want to cover all the stuff you put on your tax return. And it's pretty daunting. So a lot of attorneys, unfortunately, like to scare their clients into hiring them. Like, oh, you're going to go to jail, or you're going to owe a lot of money. That's not our approach. Our approach is let's give a lot of information. Most of the calls that come in, I try to convince people not to hire me. Because if I can do a good enough job in giving them free information and letting them make a decision, and if I really don't think I can provide value, I don't want them to retain me. I was thinking, 3 months ahead. I said, okay, if this client retains me, 3 months from now, are they going to be happy? Do they feel that I provide them value? So we'll spend time with them. I take the same thing that I do with my prospective clients. I put that on YouTube videos. I'm not giving legal advice, but what I am giving them is information. Here's a great one. If IRS shows up at your knocks on your door and says, hey, we want to talk to you about your tax balance. You haven't responded to our letters. What are you going to say to them? What are some of the questions they're going to ask you? We want to prepare them for that. So we also did a CPA training course we're doing right now for CPAs. What happens if an IRS criminal investigator comes in and says, I want to talk about John Smith's tax return? What are you going to say? No one's ever faced a situation, especially if you don't have clients that are doing a lot of crimes. So our YouTube channel is really intended to give free information, and it is on a wide variety of topics. And I can't tell you, everyone who calls us said, I watched all your videos. And I said, oh, yeah, that's great. And I said, we love it. Thank you so much. And then they want to hire us because they realized the problem's bigger than they thought they can handle. But the goal is really to give free information. So to empower people. If they can do it on their own, I prefer they do it on their own. If they really do need me because it's a really bigger problem, that conserves our time as well. And now we can actually deal with the people who truly believe that we need to help them and there's good value that we can give them.
Imagine if everyone in the service industry thought that way of, will this person be happy in 3 months from now if they hire me? I really like that perspective, and trying to convince people not to work with you if they don't need you, but they can get some advice or watch a video and know what to do when the IRS shows up at their door, which my first instinct would be run away.
Run away, exactly. I have the back door I can run.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll be right back. So good. So another piece I want to talk about, we were getting coffee the other day at Lofty Coffee, and we saw Alex Morgan, our good friend. She couldn't make it today, but I want to talk about what we were mentioning, which was this idea of how to figure out what you want to do with your life. You have found something that you love, and you're very passionate about it, and I can tell. And we'll get into that. We'll get into your journey. But what we were talking about, I was telling you about these two viewpoints that come from these two authors, speakers. There's Robert Greene on one hand, and for listeners of the podcast, if you've heard this before, Vinny and I had a little bit of this conversation. Vinny's my co-host. Robert Greene, author of 48 Laws of Power, Laws of Human Nature. He's all about finding your passion, your purpose. He calls it your life task. He says that you need to go from job to job, following that inner voice, that intuition, to figure out what it is that you're here to do. And once you focus on that and obtain mastery, he has a book called Mastery. That's where the riches, the influence, the fulfillment, the meaning, the happiness comes from. So that's, we'll call it Camp Robert Greene. And then you have another person who both Vinny and I look up to, Scott Galloway. He's a speaker. He's professor at NYU Business School. He's written a bunch of books. And he takes a very opposite viewpoint. And he says, your passion and your purpose, ignore that. Like if you stumble into that, that's wonderful, but most people won't. Instead, what you should do if you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life is focus on what you're good at. Find something you're at least above averagely talented at. Work really hard at it, get your 10,000 hours, and over time, you will grow into a passion for it because you're really good at it, you're competent, you have influence, people come to you for it. And so there are these two opposing viewpoints. Robert Greene says, find your passion and follow it. Scott Galloway says, find your talent, ignore your passion. Where do you land?
That's a great question. So I think I have to start with my ultimate premise that I don't do anything in life unless it hits my passion. It comes back to a couple things. During COVID, we had an office. It was about 2,100 square feet. Had everybody work in the office, and then COVID happened, and nobody wanted to come to work, and we couldn't actually. Everyone left, and we decided every morning we were going to have a Zoom call for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, because the world was falling apart. Nobody knew what was going to happen, and we're going to go back to work, not. So we just started kind of BSing for the first half an hour with all the employees. And then we started realizing, look, guys, we're here for a specific purpose. We're not here as a tax law firm simply to solve people's problems. We're here to provide value. And what is our purpose in life? So we kind of redefined what that is. Because when you have a purpose in a company and among your friends and you share that purpose, you can accomplish things 10 times more than just simply, oh, I like to do this. So when I was younger, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I became an attorney because everyone else was going to law school. I knew I had to go get a professional degree. It was either going to become a doctor or an attorney. And the interesting thing is, I think first semester into law school, I did horrible, and I was stressed. And I ended up seeing a therapist or a hypnotherapist to teach me how to relax. And she specialized in doctors and attorneys. She said, you guys are really stressed out. But it allowed me to take the stress out of my mind and to have extraordinary focus. And then I did really well, got a scholarship, finished law school. And I finished law school and I said, okay, what kind of a job am I going to get? And it was really hard to get a job in transaction, like, doing contracts. You have to have experience. So I got into litigation, which was an easier career. And then after about 4 or 5 years, I realized I'm not really happy doing what I'm doing. I loved the work itself, but the arena that I competed in was not, I felt like a gladiator, and no matter what I did, people were always pissed off. Not because I didn't get good results. So I'll explain. In litigation, when you're representing somebody in court, so I always did defense. So my client would be sued, and I worked for law firms, right? Even I remember this one client, he sold he bought 10 containers of mushrooms from a company in China. and the first container came extremely late, so he couldn't resell them to the restaurants. So anyways, he finally got the one container, and he had 9 more that he was waiting for, and then he didn't want to pay for it. And so he got sued, rightfully so. And I represented him, and I said, okay, we have to get an expert as to, how hard it is to get these mushrooms and how hard it is to sell and to find replacement mushrooms. And he says, you know what? I don't want to hire an expert. I'll be the expert. I'm going to save some money. I said, well, no, you can't be. The rules are you have to get somebody who's objective. You're a defendant. You can't be your own expert. He's like, well, so he was like, I shouldn't have been sued in the first place. I don't know why I'm sued. I shouldn't have been sued. And it just got me thinking, what is the value do I have? What value am I bringing to this arena? And it's a triangle. You have the judge, which is one part of that triangle, who's always angry and yelling at people and said, either to me or to the opposing counsel, what are you doing here? I disagree with that, always challenging us, good or bad. Then I had the plaintiff on the other side who was always pounding his fist, we're going to bankrupt your company. We're going to take them down. You better pay now. And then I had my client who says, I'm not even sure why I had to hire an attorney because I shouldn't have been sued in the first place. And regardless if I won the motions or if I did well in the litigation, everybody was always pissed off. And I said, you know what, this is a bad picture. And I got to the point I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I sat down with my mentor. I had a lunch with him one time. I remember this. This is back in 2000, late 2006, early 2007. And I said, Stuart, his name was Stuart Hurwitz, good friend of mine. And he was a tax attorney. He said, I think I want to quit law. I don't like litigation. And I asked him, do you have a job for me? And he turned to me and says, I'm not going to hire you. I remember I was really pissed.
Yeah, that must be hard to hear from your mentor.
I need a job. I don't want to do what I'm doing anymore. And the best thing he did for me, he told me, look, quit your job, go back to law school, get a master's in tax. I think you're going to be great at it. I think you're going to like it. And he was right. And I quit my job. My wife had to support me. She was also an attorney. She was working many hours. And I said, okay, this is what's going to happen. Signed up for law school again for the master's. And it was 3 semesters, and I finished it. And I love what I do. And since that point, I wake up every morning about 5 a.m., and I'm excited for the day. There's never a day that I'm like, oh, God, I got to go to work. Is it Friday yet? It's an excitement. What am I going to accomplish today? And so that's my drive. So when you talk about Robert Greene or Galloway, and I think they're opposing views, right? I think in the beginning, you have to, when you're starting a career, you have to go through the trials and tribulations. You have to sweat. You have to, break your mind into the career and figure things out on your own. And it may not be enjoyable. And I remember having different jobs along the way. My first job out of law school was doing insurance defense. And that was, I have to say, extraordinarily boring.
No way. I would have never guessed.
Insurance, I'm like, okay. So I was defending people who, I represented State Farm when they were being sued because a lady had a water leak in her house. It was a 2-story house, and I felt bad for her, but it's kind of an interesting story. So she had a water leak, 3 years prior to this case, and they remediated the water. They pulled the water out. They opened the walls up. They fixed everything, and then the same thing happened again. Her wash machine overflowed from the top floor, and water rained down into the kitchen, destroyed everything. So they fixed it. The insurance company paid, and then the same thing happened again. And the second time they opened it, they found mold. And then so she made up these stories, and I say their stories, and I'll tell you why in a second. She had bad coughing. It's like, the mold is making me sick, my family's sick, and I want damages for my medical expenses. Well, I love fact finding, and again, I loved being an attorney. I just didn't love litigation. But I ended up doing some research, and we got medical records from her employer because there was a doctor on site, and found that it was not the mold that was contributing to her coughing and her lung respiratory issues. It was the crack cocaine. So I said, okay.
That'll do it.
It was fun getting at the heart of it, but that was the fun part. I found the fun parts about litigation. I didn't like the litigation, but I had to get through that. And coincidentally, the knowledge about insurance law comes into my cases in tax all the time. So yes, it was not fun to have to work in a litigation job doing insurance defense, but you have to get through it because you learn a lot, and that always comes full circle. So I think Galloway is correct up until a certain point. You do have to do the things that you're not passionate about, but that you're semi-good at, and become good at those things, and then translate those skills into a career that you do have purpose and passion. Because I can tell you, at least in my industry, a lot of attorneys are not happy what they're doing. They're doing it because they either were told to get into it, or because it's some people like the control. I like to have the control, and I don't know. There's all sorts of reasons people get into different careers. But at some point, you're going to burn out, or you're going to be very unhappy. And it's because you never found your passion and purpose. And I found my passion and purpose in law, just in a different area that I didn't know. And my mentor tapped me on the back, literally. He intersected in my lifeline of my life, right? At that point, early in my career, I ended up, had I not known him, I would have probably quit law altogether and got into something different. But I had known him, and he intersected at the right time. I was willing to accept his suggestions, and he said, look, you should try something different. And I did, and I love what I do, and I found my passion and purpose. I had no idea I was going to love tax. In law school, so that was the master's level tax, but in regular law school, I took a tax class, and I had a teacher who did not have the passion. He was an associate dean at the time. He was also a partner in a really big law firm in Georgia. Like, they're well known. And he was teaching tax, and he didn't want to teach tax, and I can tell he didn't want to teach it. He was a very smart guy. So I remember going to his office hours, and I said, look, I'm not understanding this section. It was really, now that I look back, I'm like, this was really simple. Section 61, why are we taxed? We're taxed on anything we get a benefit unless there's an exclusion or an exception. So I said, I'm not understanding this whole part right here. And he turns, the very first thing he does, he turns around behind him. He says, you see this picture of this tall building behind me? And I said, yeah. You see how it has 50-some floors? I said, yeah. You see how it comes to a point? I said, yeah. Well, you see how there's a penthouse in the very top? He's like, yeah. He says, that's where my office is. I said, okay, can we get back to this section? And I hated tax because he didn't like tax. He didn't like to teach. So I think sometimes in life, we don't like things because we're just not in the right environment. We're not around people who want to teach us and who want to push us forward and make us think. Had I had a different teacher, I probably would have gotten into tax much sooner. Anyways, long story short, I love what I do. I have a passion for it. But my culture in my firm, we hire first on purpose and passion and culture before we hire anything else. Because you could hire the most experienced attorney to work for you, or the most experienced employee. But if they don't want to do what you do, and they're just there because they're really good at it, it kind of destroys your culture. So when we hire employees, we do a couple of different personality tests, but we want to know, is this really what you want to do? And everybody says, yeah, I want to do tax. Well, why do you want to do tax? Well, I think this is like a puzzle. I want to figure it out. I'm like, there's a lot of puzzles in life. Why tax specifically? What makes it? Do you like numbers? I really don't like numbers. Okay, you're probably not going to be good. Oh, I like numbers. Do you like to write? No, I don't really like to write. You got to have the elements because we want to have people that push the needle forward, right? And there's a lot of people who do a lot of things in life and service industry, and you could tell the ones who got it, want it, and are competent. GWC, that's our internal term. It comes from this model, this way of managing companies called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. Gino Wickman invented it. He wrote a book called Traction. We've implemented it for the last 4 years, and we live and die by that principle. So we figured out internally, what are we? Why do we like to do what we do? End of the day, when we're working on cases, we're not thinking, we're going to get the lowest number for the client. It's not about that. It's not about we got to put numbers on a financial sheet to convince the IRS that our principles are right. It's correct. It's about saving the client. So it gets to, what is our purpose in life? Our purpose in life is to help companies survive, because when the IRS descends upon them, it's a make it or break it. If we don't win, and we're dealing with cases, we had a $150 million money laundering case, and we saved the client, didn't go to jail. Well, one of them did, one of them didn't. But at the end of the day, we want to unravel that so we can help them move forward. Or, typical company gets audited by IRS, and we estimate the liability is going to be $2 million. Most companies were just shut down. And we had an interesting case where we had a manufacturer. I can't specify because it gets too much details about the client, but right. We had a manufacturing client, and they lost $30 million back in 1996, and IRS didn't believe it. And they lost $30 million because they manufactured something, and the industry changed, and the laws changed. So their product became worthless, and they had to borrow money from an offshore company in Hong Kong, an investment company, and money locally. And then they started making money, and then 20 some odd years later, they used those $30 million losses, and they made a lot of money to offset, so they weren't paying any taxes. And IRS audited them naturally and says, well, is this $30 million real? Prove it to us. They wanted us to go back 20 years and show them that they lost money 20 years ago. That's a hard, and long story short, We strategized, we figured out a way, because our passion and purpose was to find the solution so this client could survive. We did that. And the investor from Hong Kong flew out from Hong Kong when we finished the audit and we succeeded. We got the entire 30 million and said, thank you. You saved the company. You saved the 75 employees who work here. You saved our investment. You saved the whole purpose. And the founder of the company, who had this company for 30 plus years, says, thank you. Had we not solved that problem, they would have closed the company. Everything would have been lost. The right person in life, me, intersected with my passion, my purpose, and find the needle in the haystack to solve this case. If I didn't like tax, I probably wouldn't have found the right result because I wasn't passionate about driving it home. So that's it.
That's beautiful. And there's so many good things in what you shared that I want to unpack. The first is the benefits, or really the necessity, of teaching something that you love, or having a teacher that loves what they're teaching. I think you hit the nail on the head, because for me, I studied finance undergrad. I went into finance not because I necessarily loved finance, but because I had such a good teacher that made me fall in love with the challenge of putting all the pieces together and telling the story. And I can tell that you are a problem solver and a storyteller, and we're going to come back to that. But it's so interesting to think that the trajectory of my life, the trajectory of your life, could have been different if that man loved teaching tax instead of just telling you about his penthouse.
Yeah, exactly. It makes all the world a difference.
That is really something that stood out to me. And then I totally agree with what you're saying, that Scott Galloway gets it right at first. And especially in the beginning of your career, you might not know what you're passionate about. And you find that out through doing a bunch of things you don't like. Mm-hmm. It's almost the process of elimination. And it's really interesting that you say that the stuff you learned about insurance comes back into what you're doing now. It's like that Steve Jobs thing. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. And I think you're correct in that at first, focus on what you're talented at. Do something. But you can't do that forever. Because, again, if I bring my own story into this, I was really good with numbers. I was good at finance. And if I would have stayed there, my soul would have died. So you can start there, but there's this period at which you need to make a change to go towards what you're more passionate about, that I think a lot of people inadvertently blow past and blow through because they start making good money, the golden handcuffs, they're 5-10 years into their career, and they know they don't like it, but how are they going to make a change now? They'd have to go back, start at the beginning. So there's that piece too. And then the last thing that really stood out to me is your mentor telling you to quit your job and go back to law school and get a master's. Like, that is a bold statement. And where did that confidence come from for him? And how did he know you'd like tax?
I don't know. That's a great question. You know, sometimes when you talk, sometimes it takes an outsider to see the solution. Sometimes you yourself can't see it. You're just caught up in a job, and you know it makes money, and you need the job to survive. And how are you going to stop that and take the risk, do something different, go back to school? You don't know if it's going to work out. But I think anything you set your heart to, you'll find the right result. You might not start on that path in the beginning, like you start up a company and you're like, oh, I'm going to tweak a bunch of stuff. If you have the passion, you're going to get to the right result. You're going to change. You're going to pivot. But I think the unfortunate part is not to change. I hate complacency. I hate mediocrity. And that's just my type A personality coming out. So every 3 years I do something different. I might get another degree. You know, I'm not going to change my career because I love what I do. But if I didn't like it, if I had my own firm, how would I do that? I think you just have to, it's overcoming the fear. Because I would think ahead. Here's another thing. And my paralegal, actually, we talked about it a lot. And I think there's Frank Shamrock is one of our mentors as well. Frank and I, we became, acquaintances quite a bit, and we boxed with him in the park sometimes. But I had him come over. I found him because he had a TEDx on fear, and you have to watch it. So if you type in Frank Shamrock fear TEDx, you'll come across his TEDx. And his whole thing was that he grew up in an abusive household, so they put him in a foster home, and he realized that if he didn't want to be there anymore, all he has to do is commit some crime. And this is publicly knowledge. I'm not saying anything that's private. He committed crime, not violent. We're talking probably, some theft and stuff like that. And he realized he would go from house to house. And he got to the end of the rope where they put him in a halfway house and said, okay, guy by the name of Joe. Joe said, if you don't change your ways, this is going to be your life for the next whatever years. You're going to go into maximum state penitentiary, and that's it. You got to change your life. Well, he didn't change, and they put him in Folsom Prison. He was in prison for I'm not sure how many years, and then he finally got out, and Joe came to him and says, are you ready to change your life? And he says, yes, and he adopted him. Joe Shamrock adopted Frank, and I believe his brother as well. And Frank became the #1 MMA fighter, and he won. He's undefeated, has all these titles, and it just shows because he had a passion to do that, right? But the biggest thing that he taught me, and when I watched that several years ago, he said life is basically a journey, and you start off point A when you're born, and you're here right now. But how much longer do you have until your life is going to end? Is it going to be way out there, or is it going to be close? So you got to live your life like today's the last. What if the doctor told you that today's your last day? What would you do differently today? Would you buy a car? Would you buy a boat? Would you take a trip somewhere? Well, you'd probably do things that you wanted to do but never had the guts to, because now, who cares? I'm going to just take all the stops out. I'm going to just go full board and do things that I want to do. I might die, but it's okay, right? So what if you could take that fear out of your mind, you know? And that's the way I live life every day, because life is too short. So let's do things today. Let's not wait till tomorrow. That's kind of my philosophy.
It's a great philosophy, and it's true in that you don't know if tomorrow is guaranteed. Ryan Holiday says, live like you've already died and you've come back, and this is all bonus. This is all extra. I love that mindset of what would you do if you realized you were going to die in 6 months or a year? And I didn't think I'd be talking about this today, but it's got me thinking of this past Tuesday. I went to the movies with my girlfriend, and we saw this new movie that's out. It's called We Live in Time, and it's branded as a romantic comedy, but it is not a rom-com. It is a brutally sad movie about a young couple who the wife has ovarian cancer, stage 3 ovarian cancer. And it's beautifully directed and shot where it skips around. Like each shot is a different time in their relationship in their life. And so you get to see the stages of cancer where she's about to die, and then it goes back to when they're having their little baby girl. And it's just this unbelievably sad and moving movie. But you walk away from experiences like that, or When Breath Becomes Air is one of my favorite books. It's about a neuroscientist, doctor. He's had like pretty much every professional medical accolade you could get, and he's diagnosed with terminal lung cancer at age 36. So it's having these reminders. That's what I'm coming back to. It's the Latin phrase memento mori, remember you will die. They're so powerful. And if death is inevitable and it's coming for all of us, why not shake things up, get out of the box, get out of our comfort zones, and do all the things now that we're too afraid to do? Because that's one of the questions I ask my clients. It's one of the questions I asked you in the workshop. What is one thing that you would regret not doing if you got to the end of your life and you realized that, crap, I never had the chance to do that? And tell us your answer. Your answer is great.
Yeah. So I want to travel around the world with my kids, because my kids in about another 4 years, the oldest one is going to go to college. And if she doesn't go to college in, where we live in San Diego, it'll be harder to see her. Then she's going to travel to different cities. She might end up getting a job there. And then it's going to be, negotiating with her on when she's going to come back home. But now I have that opportunity. Let's take the time now. So if I could take a year off, and what I mean by year off, we're going to travel. And I have, since COVID, we've become more technologically savvy. We can operate our law firm from anywhere in the world, although we have an office, a physical location. We're set up for doing that. So if I could travel around the world for a year with my kids and still work, and I get to experience them day after day in different cities and different places that I always wanted to go, maybe it's Japan, maybe it's China, what an amazing adventure to share that. And then when they go off to college, I will feel that I had extracted as much involvement with my kids as I possibly can. Not that I don't spend time. I spend a lot of time with my kids now. But it's a whole different thing, because we would all be experiencing this together. We're all going to be in a new environment. We're all going to be in a new country, a different language. We're all going to be learning at the same time. What an amazing thing that would be. So that's what I'm kind of envisioning. I've set the wheels in motion already. It's a big, tall order, but I'm going to make it work. I think it's such an important goal, because what I would regret, which is the question you asked, if I got to 75, is that maybe I didn't spend as much time that I could have. I spend a lot of time right now, but that type of time is invaluable. You'll always look back to that. And I'm sure my kids would go, God, remember the time we took a year off before we went to college? And we got to share all these things. We got to go to 20 different countries and eat different food and learn different language. That's pretty cool.
That's super cool. And that would be something that you and your kids will remember forever. So I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to get postcards from all the places you go.
Oh, I love that. There we go.
There's something that you mentioned briefly, but then kept going. And it's this piece around your firm is set up to be able to do this. And I know when we got coffee, you were telling me when COVID happened and you all were working from home, you kind of had a decision to make as a leader, as a manager of people, on how strict to be, of where they are, when they're in the office, when they're not. And tell us a little bit about that and how you gave them some freedom and what that's turned into.
Right. So when we all worked in the office pre-COVID, I remember, I've always given people, I didn't really micromanage, but I'm a perfectionist. So throughout the day, I'd ask my paralegal, I said, so what are you working on? Tell me what's going on. And she'd run me through the thing and, the analysis. But I'd want to see what they're doing, and if somebody didn't show up on time, say, hey, why were you 5 minutes late? The typical things that companies do. And then COVID happened. And then I realized I could either have employees and back off and give them more freedom, or I could be the same old, manager and have nobody. Nobody wants to be micromanaged. And especially since COVID, they all want to work remote. They all want flexibility. They all want, people I think have always wanted the work-life balance, but now that has a different meaning. You don't really have a choice. And people want to do what they're going to do. So I thought about it and I said, okay, I'm going to be flexible. And I thought about what are the most important things that I need? What are the bare minimums that I need to have a successful employee? And we came out with about 5 or 6 different things. And it was also because of an incident that occurred right when COVID started. One of my employees had taken a trip for the weekend and was still at that location. And then we were all on Zoom, like I mentioned at the very beginning, and then everybody had their cameras on, and one person had this sign behind them that says pool rules. And I'm like, oh, somebody's at the pool. So I said, okay, that doesn't look good. It's a bad message for the other people who are stuck at home, who want to do good work and are going to muster through it. It's like, well, why am I working if this person's at the pool? What is this about? So I had a conversation with this person afterwards. And I said, look, that's not cool. If you want to be somewhere, then just blur your screen out, the background, so we can't tell where you were. At least that helps the team.
Yeah.
But then I thought about it. I spent a lot of time. I spent 4 hours and I put pen to paper and I said, what are the most important things that I need? Do I care? The first question is, do I care whether they work? Do I care whether they're on an airplane to China and working? Do I care whether they're at an amusement park? I said, it doesn't really matter, but here's what does matter. They have to be in a quiet area that's focused. And we're dealing with sensitive tax information, right? If somebody owes money, we don't want to be on Zoom and have somebody else hear that who's walking by. So privacy is important and focus. Number 2, you have to have internet connection. Number 3, you have to be able to take phone calls from clients and respond, it's during the work hours. And you have to get your assignments done when they're due. Beyond that, I don't care. So it's a difference between, do you know how, and I'm hoping I'm going to accurately rephrase this, but do you know how they train elephants?
No, I don't.
I heard this story. I'm going to repeat it. I hope it's true. I think it is true. So when a baby elephant is young, they tie a chain, like a metal chain link to a stake in the ground, a metal stake, so that the elephant can't get away. And as it grows up, they replace that chain with a rope that the elephant, a strong elephant, can easily break, but it doesn't break because it remembers when it grew up that it couldn't escape. End of the day, if we're going to chain our workers and our friends to certain things where they don't have freedom, they're going to, not all the time, but I've just experienced that in all the employees that I've ever hired. And by the way, I used to manage my parents' company. We had 30 employees. For several years I did that, and salespeople were the hardest ones to manage. But if you're going to restrict someone so much, you may not get the most out of them. And if you give them entirely all the freedom that they need, but within the confine, like a box that's a big box, these are the borders you don't want to go around, but you can go anywhere you want. It's a whole different thing. It puts the responsibility on them to do the right thing. Now, you have to start with the right person. You have to start with a person who's motivated, has passion for what you want to do, not somebody's like, yeah, just another job. Oh my God, it's almost 5 o'clock. Can't wait to be off. No. Their day should be like, we're going to get a result for this client. We're going to save this client. They're going to continue the business. Their employees are going to continue to work there. If it's the end goal, it's not the tasks that come along the way that we're always focused on. If you have the right person in the right job, the right fit, like the Good to Great book talks about, and your hedgehog principle, which is what we talked about as well, doing something that is passionate to you and you're doing something that you are the best in the world at, then it's a whole different field, because now you have people who want to be there and you give them the freedom. And sometimes they'll take it and sometimes they won't. But it relieves you of the burden to have to watch over somebody versus this person has it. They GWC it. They got it. They want it. They're competent at it. And that's how we run things. So it frees your mind of the frustration of thinking, is this person really doing their work versus, hey, this is more of I know they're going to do a good quality job. And now they're a participant at the table, the same table that you're at. There's no hierarchy in our firm, right? But everybody knows what they have to do and things get done because you have the right people there.
And you treat them like a human being. I think one of the most frustrating, humiliating, and just soul-sucking things from working a normal 9 to 5 where you have to be somewhere is like you can't even go to the dentist. Like you have to take time to go to the dentist. It's stressful. You can't run to the grocery store if you need something. So I love letting people have a sense of ownership and autonomy, especially over their schedule, as long as they get things done. Like they have to get things done. But if they do that, you can control your life a little bit more. And you don't have to sit there at work pretending you're busy, even if you're not busy. That was one of the best things about working from home when I still worked for someone else, is if I got my work done and I wasn't busy, I could go outside and sit in the sun and be on call, ready to do more work when it came in. But just that sense of autonomy, and that's what self-determination theory talks about. The 3 things people want is belonging, autonomy, and mastery. So they need some autonomy over their schedule. They obviously want to belong and be somewhere that they believe in. And then that mastery piece goes into the competence. Got it, want it, competent.
Competent, yes.
I love that.
GWC.
And there's so many different ways I want to take this, but one of the things that you brought up that I've been thinking about a lot recently is that person who's sitting there checking the clock, checking their watch, saying, oh my gosh, thank God it's almost 5. If you think about that, or another example, you're checking out at the grocery store and you say, how's the day going? And they're like, oh, it's really busy. It's going fast, so it's good. If you actually think about that language, you dislike your life so much that you're hoping that it ends faster. I can't wait to get to the end of the day. I can't wait to get to the weekend. You're essentially fast forwarding your life, and we have a finite time to be here. So if you're doing something where you're counting down the minutes until you can stop doing that thing, it's probably not the right thing.
I think it's sad, but I think it's also, it's challenging yourself if you are that person to rethink that and having the courage and overcoming the fear that you might think that I'm never going to find the right career. There is a good career for you that's a perfect fit. It's just getting to understand what that is. So the guy who's bagging the groceries at the supermarket, you might think, well, this guy's always going to be unhappy. But some people like to do it. But think about that. What would be a reason somebody would like to do that? Maybe it's they like to make people happy. Maybe the goal for them is like, maybe they're in college, maybe they're not in college, but maybe you meet all sorts of people, and we have no idea where these people come from. There could be somebody who's independently wealthy. I met a guy who was actually a client of ours that was extremely wealthy. And you know what? One of the things he did, he spent his time coaching high school football. This guy was a multi-millionaire, had no clue this guy could buy everybody 10 times over. But that's what he chose to do with his life because it brought him passion and happiness. So the guy who's bagging the groceries or the cashier there, they might already have retired and made a ton of money, and they just don't want to be bored at home. So he said, this is a great way to interact with people. Maybe they just like to make people happy, and maybe their goal for the day is how many people can I make smile? So when I was younger, I worked in a bank, and that was a great job. I actually loved that. But I realized, and I did a little test one day, I never told anybody about it, because sometimes I was a teller, and people were always upset. I worked at Bank of America at the time. This is back many years. And I remember seeing people in certain branches, like the La Jolla branch, people were just unhappy. They had more money, but they were more unhappy. But I worked at the PB branch, Pacific Beach. They're all young kids. They were always happy. It was just interesting dichotomy. But in La Jolla, I would say, okay, I'm going to do a test today. Because how many people can I get to respond if I say nothing to them? Like they'd walk up at the window, and sometimes you say hello and they don't answer you, and they just throw their deposit at you and do it. I'm like, but that's not very friendly. They didn't respond. So then I said, okay, what happens if I say nothing to them? What if I just, they give me their papers and I'm just quiet and I take their deposit and I do it and I give them a receipt and zero interaction from my mouth? They'd be angry. And sometimes they complained. And I realized that we have an impact on people. We may not realize it, We might smile at somebody, be nice to the cashier. You recognize, I don't know, a lot of people do this. I try to look at if they have a name badge. It's like, oh, hey, John, how's it going? Thanks for helping me today. It's really, you did an awesome job. Giving somebody a compliment would bring up their day, And so I'm always looking for that. But I think getting back to your purpose is such an important thing. And if somebody's waiting to leave work that day because they're not happy, maybe they just need to figure out what is, and they just need to meet the right mentor. But sometimes you're not ready to accept that. Had Stuart, my mentor, came to me in my first or second year of my job as an attorney, I might have been like, Stuart, I'm doing well. I don't need it. I'll deal with it later. People give suggestions all the time. I think you have to be at the right time in your life and willing to accept that mentorship from somebody.
Absolutely. And sometimes things need to get worse before they can get better.
100%.
You need to hit that rock bottom and start questioning everything. And going back to the grocery store cashier person, you're totally right. There are the people who smile and make your day, and then there's the people who you can tell really don't want to be there. And if you can just reframe it into the purpose of this is to make other people happy. One of my favorite things to do, I love the experiment you shared, is to be not in an obnoxious way, but ruthlessly kind to strangers, to see how many strangers you can make smile. You can do weird things. When I'm on a run, sometimes I'll just go up for a high five with another runner who's going past. And it's probably 50-50 of people who just kind of freak out and ignore me versus who actually just go up for a high five. And I'm telling you, one of the best things you can do to improve your day is high five a stranger. It's electric. You really feel it. And you said something earlier that I want to come back to is that if you have that passion, anything is possible. I have been thinking about that a lot recently. And that now that I'm doing what I love, I'm working long hours, I'm consistently facing my fears and getting out of my comfort zone, and I'm doing it all with the biggest smile on my face because I'm just so happy that I can do this and to actually see what I love turning into a life and a way to make money and a way to really help people. One, I can do it forever. And two, I've been thinking about I can't not be successful if I just never give up. No matter whether it's podcasting, I'm getting into speaking, I've been coaching for 3 years now, but if I do that for the next 50 years, it doesn't matter how many times I get rejected or told no. If I just keep coming back with a smile, it can't not happen.
You're going to find the right combination to makes you successful because you want to get there. Yeah. And you don't know how close you are to, I don't know where I read it. Sometimes, when you're basically digging for gold when you start a new business, you don't know if it's a mile down or if you're just a foot. And if you quit today and you might have been only a foot away, what if you just imagine had you just tried a little bit longer? So I think passion is the drive that will get you there. Because without passion, you're not going to be as excited and be curious and want to figure things out. Because we're not born with these instructions. Even my business, when I started it as an attorney, I was afraid. Oh my God, am I going to do the right thing? I knew how to do it, but when I opened my own practice versus working for somebody else, when you open your own business and there's so much more risk, you're like, oh my God, this is going to just, I'm stressed out. But then I made it work. I figured things out because I loved it. I loved doing what I was doing. But I want to do something that I forgot to mention. So in our firm, everyone who works for me, sometimes they need to go to the dentist. I said, don't worry about it. Just let me know you're going to go. You want to take 2 hours? That's fine. And one of the other requirements I was telling this one employee, which I made it a standard rule for everyone about that sandbox, if you want to work from 9 to 12 and then from 12 to 5, you want to go do something different, you need some time off, you want to go get a massage, and then from 5 p.m. until midnight, you want to resume, or 5 to 10, that's okay. I don't care how you move the pieces around in your day. You got the work done. You're not missing any phone calls. Things are getting done. But at the end of the day, this is how I like to equate it. Everybody has a business side to them. You have objectives you want to get in your career. You want to become a better attorney. You want to become a better a paralegal. Whoever works for me, my paralegal, I say, look, I want to give you skills. I want you to take courses. I want you to become better. I want you to challenge yourself. But at the same time, you have personal needs as well. You might want to become, work out more and take care of your health. You might want to learn a different skill on the side. You might want to do boxing, whatever it's going to be. You can't suppress that. Nobody wants to be suppressed on the personal side. You can't just say, I'm going to work 100 hours a week and ignore my personal side, ignore my relationships, ignore my family, ignore maybe I want to start a business on the side. One of my employees want to do that. Great. As long as it doesn't interfere, you can do both. Great. But I want to help you get there. So I'm going to help you achieve your personal goals, and we're going to work together on your professional ones. And now you have this work-life balance, because work-life balance means a lot of things to a lot of people. It doesn't mean I'm going to handle my work stuff, my personal stuff first, and then my work. They've got to be in harmony. And it does mean sometimes we're going to work for a while really hard, and there's going to be less time for personal, and maybe the opposite will happen. But I'm extraordinarily flexible, and I got the right people working for me. They're all A players who can produce extraordinary results, but they're all passionate. And because of that, there's trust. And we both share the common goals of doing really well at work and getting great results. But I want them to do things on the personal side as well. I want them to, if they want to learn how to speak Chinese and they want to go to, community college or sign up for a college class, and it's in the middle of the day, fine, do that. And you want to work a little later in the evening, we'll make it work. But at the end of the day, they're satisfying their personal needs. You have to do that as a person. You can't let 5 years of your career run you down and you haven't done anything for yourself personally. That just doesn't help anybody, which it also doesn't help me, because I don't feel good about it. And then I'm not going to have employees who last a long time. I'm going to have a lot of turnover, and we don't have really that much turnover because we are taking care of the personal side, and they're in the right position, the GWC it, and we're having people that aspire to do the things that we do.
That's a really powerful mindset for you as an employer to have, is that you want the person to be wholly satisfied with the work, yes, but also with the personal stuff, because happy employees are going to produce better work. And so as a coach, I work with a lot of people, and I've done a lot of leadership coaching where it comes up throughout our engagement together that they actually don't really want to be there anymore. And in the back of my head, I'm like, oh crap, this company hired me to coach their leaders, and now I'm helping them find exit plans. And that's ultimately what would be best, is getting the right people in the right places. And if someone doesn't want to be there, replace them, find someone who's going to be passionate about being there.
There's an interesting, I don't know what book I got it out of. There's the analogy of a rowboat, not a rowboat. What do you call those boats where they have teams and they're...
A canoe? A crewing team?
Like a crew.
Okay.
I don't know how many people. We'll say there's 10 people on a crew boat. If some of your people are waiting, I'm like, I got another hour till I'm done. And other people like, oh my God, the day's ending in an hour. I got so many things I want to accomplish today. Opposite perspectives, literally polar opposites. The boat's not going to go very fast. Some of them are going to be rowing really slow, and other ones are going to be going fast, but they're going to be opposing each other. They all have to be going the same speed at the same time to row. And that's synchronizing, right? So the people, hopefully, my thought, if the people who hire you really want to get down to the right result, that they have happy people working for them, the right people, then they will be okay with letting them go. Kind of like in a relationship. If you date somebody and you realize, not you, of course, I'm not...
This is just advice for me personally.
Not advice for you personally, no. I can tell you had a lot of passion in with your girlfriend, and the story you told me was just heartwarming. But if you feel confident enough as an employer that you'll eventually find the right person, but you want to make sure that the people who were working for you now really want to be there, you'll be okay. And I've told employees before, over the years, I said, you know what? If this isn't the right job, I'm not upset. It's okay. Let me know if you want to go do something different. And I actually told that to an employee who did leave. And I was happy about it because I said, why are you here if this isn't what you want to do? I freed her and she found something different. I freed myself because this wouldn't have worked out. So now we can get to that result earlier and we can both begin to find a better opportunity for ourselves. You're going to be happier and I'm going to be happier. So why not let that accelerate that to today? Life is too short. The journey will take us somewhere. We don't know when that journey is going to end. Let's get to that decision today if we can. But it also showed a lot of trust because then she gave me more time to find a replacement. And she helped us extraordinarily. She helped set up systems to automate before she left. She was a great person. She just wasn't happy in that position. I think it was very stressful for her. But we ended up finding somebody else, and it changed the dynamic of the firm. This other person who left was highly qualified, but she wasn't happy. And she brought that unhappiness to the rest of the team. And when that person changed out, and we brought our current employee, who was extraordinarily happy and also very talented, the whole dynamic of the team changed. Where before, a couple of people were thinking of leaving because of this one person, and now nobody wants to leave. So having everybody on the team and being realistic about them, having employers who are willing to say, you know what, that's fine. If we need to have people leave, and we'll replace them and try to do a better job in finding the right person who has the passion, who will allow us to accelerate beyond 150% of where they are professionally and allow them to succeed and achieve their personal goals. What more could you ask for? You have happy people who want to be there, who are going to produce extraordinary things in life.
That's the dream. And team culture, company culture is so important. And this is perfect because I think I can weave this next question in under the culture umbrella. So you pulled up today in a sweet BMW. You're wearing casual clothes and Converse, and I've never seen you wear a suit. That's very different than other attorneys and tax people I've met. Is that part of the culture? Is that a personal decision?
I think it's both. I don't know if, like you were in a corporate job before. What did you wear your first couple of years?
Oh my God.
What color shirt?
Blue.
Okay. Well, okay.
Always blue.
You ruined my example, but that's okay. Most professionals, when they start off, they wear white shirts. You got to look like a newbie. You got to look like you're trying. And then you kind of wear what you want. And then I think I realized, not only because of COVID, I feel extraordinarily comfortable when I do. I feel like I know a lot, but I'm always challenging myself to learn more. So I don't want to dress to impress, but you have to have the right attire for the right situation. When a client comes in, I got a great couple of examples. When a client comes in, I feel like if I dress in a suit, and we're dealing with people who are extremely stressed. They come to our office, they're like, I'm going to lose everything. I remember this husband and wife combo. We estimated a liability to be about $8 million. They had no clue. This other attorney who I know, who they were going to go with, and my job again wasn't to convince them to hire me. I just said, here's the facts, and you should do what you feel right. I would do the same thing. If you want to go with the other person, I think you should. And here's what I would ask this person to make sure you get the right result. I'm okay with that. But they came in and they hired us, and then they started getting text messages from the wife. I can't believe he did this to me. For 30 years, we've had this business, and now we're going to go bankrupt. We're going to lose everything we have, and I want to get a divorce. I'm like, oh my God. By the way, this is very common. And when people owe a lot of taxes and there's financial constraints, the marriage, it puts a lot of strain on the marriage. But she blamed her husband for putting her in this position. I'm like, it's an audit. It's not random, but it's not like he intentionally did this either. So we solved their problem. I'm trying to remember the original example I was going to give you.
About the casual clothes and the culture.
Thanks. I didn't want to dress above them. Because if I dress above them, then I didn't want to feel like superior to them. Although I might be in knowledge, I want to feel like a partner. And partners, you want to be equal. If I dress in a suit with a jacket and a tie, which I have all that stuff. By the way, one caveat. You go to court, you want to be respectful to the judge. There's no questions. You go, and when I go to court, I'm dressed in a suit. If I go to a criminal investigation hearing, we have a lot of IRS criminal cases, I go dressed because I'm looking to overshadow them. Not with aggressiveness, but with knowledge and my appearance. If you ever walk into a CPA's office and there's piles of paper everywhere and things are disorganized and their desk looks like just a mess, you feel that their mind might be the same way as their appearance. So the appearances are everything. But in terms of clothes, I don't want to make the intimidate the client, because a lot of professionals, or especially attorneys, like to intimidate the clients. Like, I know more than you, listen to me. No, this is an interaction. We're brainstorming on solutions. But if I dress more than them, they're going to feel like, he feels like, I don't want to feel like I'm pompous, because I'm not like that. I'm opposite of that. So I dress, it says a little casual. We have no clients, but if I had a client coming in, I'd probably wear a nice shirt and not slacks, but khakis or something.
Some Lululemon dress pants?
Nah, yeah, not yet. Because I have been a business owner. I've run multiple companies. My parents had a $10 million business, retail and wholesale, lots of transactions. We dealt with famous people, Oprah Winfrey, Jerry Lewis. We had a lighting showroom, did a lot of custom stuff. But I realized that you have to be able to talk to people, not talk down to them. We're talking, and I will bring my knowledge and my business experience, because I know what you're going through, and we're going to solve it, and we solve things quickly. When I meet with IRS, I don't always dress up either. In fact, when we sit at our conference room table, the IRS will sit on one side, and I'm always sitting the other. They come in and then they want to sit on the opposite side. I'll move my chair on the same side as them, and it freaks them out. Like, whoa, what's going on over here? Oh, we're going to work on this together. Psychologically, I'm showing them on the same side as them. And look, I have a job to protect my client, and I always do that. But I'm on a job to find the right solution for both parties. And it freaks them out when I do that. But it removes that I'm against you versus we're going to do this together. And they're much more accommodating. I mean, I do it not trying to mislead them. I do it because I am a very objective person. I'm not hiding anything. I don't have to win by hiding in line. I do it by accuracy and knowledge, because there's more than one way to slice a cake. And a quick example, I always tell my employees this, but we kind of figured out it might not be entirely true. But if the IRS taxed zebras $1,000, so if you have 5 zebras, we're going to tax you $5,000 a year. What if I turn that zebra sideways and I look from behind? It looks like a horse. Zebras look a lot like horses. Now I don't see the stripes. So why can't the zebra be a horse? It's all about perspective. So my perspective to the government is always to be truthful and honest, but let's really find a way to bridge the gap, and maybe there's another perspective to things that you just didn't think about. And a lot of times we solve cases based on perspective. Like, hey, what if we turn it around this way? They might say, oh, that kind of does work. So talk about address. I don't always overdress the IRS. And they know when they come in the office, they're not wearing a gun and a badge and dressed in a suit. Why? Because they want to reduce your defenses, so you're not going to be so defensive. So you're going to give them more information. Well, I do the same thing. I always do that.
I like the idea of dressing for the occasion and being very intentional about how you're showing up with your character, but also with your appearance. And that's a lesson I think I need to hear, because I'm still traumatized from finance and having to wear, I never had to wear like a full suit to work, but wearing the corporate uniform, the dress shirt, the dress pants, the dress shoes. And now as I'm getting into speaking a little bit and doing some things, every time I put dress pants on, I'm like, oh, but intentionally thinking about, okay, how do I want to show up? How do I want to present for this? I like that idea.
It's a little different when you're an employee. Not that you don't have any flexibility, but if your boss is and I worked for a law firm where the main partner would, like, if you dare to go in the elevator with him, and they had like it was like on the 21st floor, I think it was. If you dare to go step in that elevator when he's going in, he's always going to look down at your shoes. And if your shoes, and he was in the military, he's a Marine, and if your shoes weren't like spotless, he'd comment on them. So I think showing up for the occasion, there are times in your life you're going to have to just do it regardless of whether you want to do it, because that's what your employer's requiring. But if you have the flexibility, do it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to wear Converse and meet with your clients. So we ended up having a lot of clients in the area, in our Encinitas area, where we have high-profile athletes. It's okay. I want to show them that I can relate to them. I don't have to dress up to look better than you. I don't need to do that. I can think well. I'm experienced in what I do. I'm an expert, and we're going to solve your problems. I don't have to show you that I'm better. I will prove it.
Love that. Well, you nailed the vibe today because we're both wearing Converse. So.
Love it. Same color too.
It's great. What else? We're kind of coming to the end of the episode here. Is there anything else that we want to talk about, that we want to bring into today? I know we had so much we were talking about during coffee. Just want to give you an opportunity. I have a place we can take it, but I just want to check in with you.
Yeah, I think the last thing I just kind of want to impress upon is not being fearful to take that leap. When my mentor came to me and says, you should quit your job, and he didn't know that my wife would have to work to support me. He didn't know how much I have in the bank. We didn't have very much at the time. My wife had to work, 15-hour days. She helped pay for my student loans, and I felt guilty about that. But when I got out, it was my turn, and then now she's working part-time because she's spending more time with the kids. So I think partnerships in all aspects, whether it's work, because you have a partnership with your employer, you want to be there. You have a partnership with the team that you work with. And if you can find the right fit, great. And if it's not, don't be afraid to pivot and change. It happens even in business. You might have a fantastic business, and all of a sudden everything changes in the industry. Don't be afraid to change it. It might seem like you're going in the wrong direction. Trust your gut, trust your experience, and say, okay, we're going to make this work. We're going to do it. And as long as you have the passion and desire, and you want to, and you're always asking questions, and you're inquisitive, and you're not afraid to change, then do it. There's nothing wrong with changing. You don't have to be the same person you were yesterday. But again, life is too short. So you have to make the most of every day.
There's no wrong direction, and there's no clear path. If you can see your path, it's probably not your path. I think Joseph Campbell says something similar to that. It's such good advice, and I love that you are bringing a very practical, proven successful side to it. Because when Vinny and I are on here and we're talking about passion and success, it's whatever. We're holding on to our 20s barely, turning 30 in January. Wow. But
yeah, congratulations.
You bring the actual real life experience of managing people, having companies, leading people. And it's just really nice to, one, hear that we have some similar ideas. Makes me feel like I'm on the right track. But two, bringing in the stories about what's worked, what hasn't worked. And that's one thing that I really admire about you, is you're able to look back on past versions of yourself as you take something on new every 3 years. And it sounds like you've learned a ton from where you made a mistake or you didn't do something and then you made an adjustment. Even just the being a little more of a perfectionist with your employees before COVID to after, giving them the freedom as long as they get their work done.
Yeah, I think it's really important to change. You can't be the same person you are today. You can't be that tomorrow. I think it's so important just to constantly grow and push yourself and not being afraid. I told my kids this, and they kind of questioned me. They're like, I said, I want you to fail. Well, why do you want me to fail? Don't you want us to succeed? Yeah, I want you to succeed, but you can't always win. And if you're always winning, you're not trying hard enough. I want you to push the envelope every single day. Try something new, try something different. Try to get on the varsity team and fail, and then realize, okay, what did I do wrong? Because when you fail, you can look back and go, oh, here's all the weaknesses, and you can make them better. Or you might realize this is not something for you. But if you're not failing, you're not trying. So I want you to fail. The founders of McDonald's, which I got to know, I met Joan Kroc and her daughter, and I learned a lot about them. And they were extremely successful. What we're looking at today, or before she passed away, is their empire, how they ended up. But if you look at the story about how they started, they filed for bankruptcy or went through bankruptcy 10 times. I'm like, oh my God, bankruptcy. Yeah, they pushed themselves, didn't do well, regrouped, and did it again and again and again until it worked. Now that's hard to do because, your credibility and how do people look at you? It's okay to fail. I think today people are more accepting of failure. But if you fail, don't make the same mistake 10 more times. And not say they did. They had probably different businesses, but go back and go and really dive into why did I not do well? And that's where the passion comes in. I'm going to make this business do well. Steve Jobs with Apple and all the stories that came out of that is beautiful, autobiography that was written. Great stories. I love hearing all about it. But we learn more from failure than we learn from success. So constantly push yourself.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think that failure is just the most pointed form of learning you can possibly have. It's like you can't ignore the learnings when you fail. And if you do ignore the learnings, you're going to fail again. But if you bring that in and understand it and make it part of you going forward, great. Upgrade.
Even better, when you succeed, ask why you succeeded. So we had a big scholarship event for kids. We gave away money to high school kids who applied. They had to write an essay about something they're extremely passionate about in life and what a fear is associated with that. Because a lot of people have a lot of dreams, but then they have in their mind all these negative thoughts. Oh, I'm going to fail. Maybe they want to buy a business. Maybe they want to buy a house. And in their mind, they're like, okay, I'm going to go file. I'm not going to do well. I'm going to have to file for bankruptcy. Take those thoughts away. But if you succeed, and so we had the scholarship event. It went extremely well. We planned for it. We did ultimate strategy. We started asking ourselves, why did we succeed? What worked? Why did it work? Was it accidental? If it was accidental and we don't ask ourselves about how we did well, the next time it might not be a good outcome. So we asked ourselves why things went well, and we realized we actually learned a lot. We made a list of what we're going to change for next time to improve it even better. So that's about what I say. I hate complacency because you can always do better. You can always push yourself more. You can always take on more challenges, and it makes you happier. It sucks being in that and not knowing what's right or wrong, and always pushing yourself. But you get more comfortable with it the more you do it. You get comfortable with failure. I mean, not in a bad way, but you get comfortable with learning that it's okay to fail and then regrouping and then learning that, wow, that was cool. Look how much I've learned from trying this that I didn't think I was going to like, and I like it now. And we did so well at it. So, yeah.
That curiosity piece is so important. I think that's why we get along. We're
Yes.
both very curious people. We're asking questions. We're trying to figure it out. Thank you so much for being here today. This has been phenomenal. Where can people go who are listening, whether they're local in San Diego or they're listening elsewhere? Where can they go to learn more about you?
So we have our website at milikowskytaxlaw.com. It's MILIKOWSKY taxlaw.com. We have our main telephone number at 858-450-1040. We're in Encinitas. We love having guests. We open up our office where we like having people just drop by and say hello. But we're located in Encinitas. We'd love to help out. We have a YouTube page. If you type in Milikowsky Tax Law, you can find our hundreds of videos, and we get about 80,000. I know you meant to ask about that, 80,000 views. It's all because we give free information out, and we want to help people, and people see it. So it just worked out. I enjoy doing it, and I love people learning, so I love being a mentor.
Great. So cool. I'm really excited to getting out of our comfort zone together soon. I want to do some boxing. I want to do something else crazy.
Skydiving?
I'm down. Have you been?
Twice.
Okay, I've only been once, and I want to go again, so.
Awesome. We'll have a good time. And so JT Holmes was our last speaker. He's a famous base jumper. He jumped off of the Willis Tower, a building in downtown Chicago, with a squirrel suit for the Transformers movie.
No way.
And when I learned about that, I'm like, oh my God. So he came to be our speaker, and we spent hours preparing for his presentation. We talked about it. And I said, well, how does a guy, and I don't think physically his brain is wired the same way as all of us. He doesn't have fear. I don't really think he does. He says he does, but I don't think he does. So how do you deal with fear when fear comes up? He says, I take fear out of my mind and I put it in a box. Because if I have fear and I flinch, I'm dead. So once you've committed to it, you don't turn back. And that was the one thing that I took from that. But yes, maybe skydiving. He said he would come with us.
Let's go. Let's make it happen.
Nice. Thank you.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. It's going to happen. I think we have to wrap up with that. That is amazing. Take fear out of your head. Put it in a box. Forget about it. Thanks so much for being here, John.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for everyone tuning in with us today. As always, we love you guys. We'll see you next time. If you liked this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the Dare to Dream podcast on YouTube. We want to make sure you don't miss out on any of the amazing episodes we're going to be coming out with in the future. And if you liked this video specifically, please give it a like, leave a comment, let us know what you loved. Thank you so much for being here. We love you guys.